It's an important election because it's about Putinism, and it's about the continuation of this kind of style of particular rule in Russia. And because Putin is going to win, and because it's not a real competitive election, it does raise many questions about the future stability of Russia and its economic direction. And this has implications for European policy, actually, because the Europeans at the moment, apart from sanctions, do not have any long-term strategy towards Russia because of the structure of power there. Let me turn it around the other way. What about containment? That deterrence really falls into the hands of security, what NATO is doing in the Baltic states and in Poland, increasing rotational deployments of troops. That's a kind of deterrence. Engagement, well, engagement has to be two-way. And the Europeans can do some trade, but the sanctions actually weaken this. The European Union could do perhaps more engagement with civil society, perhaps more engagement with student exchange programs, perhaps more engagement in reaching out to independent media activists. Yes, of course, the Kremlin will say this is interfering, but if Europe believes in values and human rights and the rule of law, the role of civil society shouldn't be neglected. So that's one kind of engagement. The other kind of engagement, I suppose, would be a kind of containment, that the European Union should not be reluctant to reach out properly to Moldova and Belarus, Georgia and others, regardless of the interference which Russia is doing in these countries. Otherwise, you will have a new cordon sanitaire between the EU proper and then the lands between the EU and Russia. And at the moment, actually, these lands are being contested. It is a kind of competition between the EU and Russia, as we see with Ukraine. The transatlantic relationship is going through a major sort of intellectual shift. Some people speak about post-Atlanticism. We haven't gone there yet, because the West is about Europe and the United States. Don't worry, I will answer your question. But the West also must now embrace much more Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, like-minded countries in Latin America. So the idea of Atlanticism must be wider. And this is very important because Putin continues. If there's one element of continuity in Russian foreign policy, it's to weaken the West. And that means breaking up the transatlantic relationship. That means weakening the unity of NATO. And as long as the West and NATO keep this in mind, the Atlantic structures that were so important after 1945 need to be strengthened to actually ward off any kind of disintegration of the alliance. NATO is the bogeyman of the Kremlin.